Hi folks, I have good news for you about this live stream. You may be wondering why you're seeing this live stream pop up in your feed again. And the reason is that I've re-uploaded it. I don't usually do this for my videos, but there was a problem with the original live stream and I've fixed it. The problem was that the video capture card that I had the FPV feed running into, the video was freezing up and you couldn't see what the copter was doing, which kind of, I don't know. I mean, I did a lot of Q&A and I feel like there was still some good info there, but several of you were justifiably really mad and were like, what's the freaking point if we can't see what the copter's doing? One of the commenters had the idea to take the DVR video from my goggles and yeah, I always have a SD card in there and it was recording the whole time. So I've gone back and I've extracted the DVR video from my goggles and I've manually pasted it in to the live stream, and that's why I'm re-uploading it. So if you tried to watch this before and you got super frustrated, so I know, I apologize for that. I'm doing my best. Now I fixed it and I hope you'll give it a second chance. I hope you'll maybe take something from it. The Fat Shark DVR drops frames occasionally, so the video, I've done my best to get it in sync with the sticks, but I feel like the value of the content is way higher. I know it's a lot to ask you guys to watch an hour and 45 minutes of a live stream. That's a lot of time, especially in this day and age of short attention spans. And so I really want to make sure that if you're going to commit that time to watching the video, you get the most value out of it, the most educational content. And that's why I took the time to go ahead and edit this stuff in, and I'm re-uploading it now. So thank you very much. Enjoy. Broadcast is started.
Maybe they're going to start right on time.
Oh, we'll see.
Yeah, I'm listening.
Yeah, it hasn't. Any minute now. And I think we're streaming.
Sweet.
We should be streaming. I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. We could all learn something today. We're going to try something really audacious. I'm going to try to do a PID tuning. No, hold on. Hold on. The stream is starting. YouTube has to have some hiccups. Let's just wait a second to make sure the stream has actually started before I do my intro. It looks like it's started to me. Let's just give it a second to get going. How are we doing? Just sit tight, everybody. The usual couple of minutes when amateur streamers who don't know what they're doing start streaming and have to make sure they're actually streaming.
It's still waiting.
Reload the page.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, I show that I'm streaming, and my compatriot here, RandomFPV, is also helping me out. Hello, there, stick your head in there.
There's a hand in your hand for you guys.
He's here helping me run the chat and stay on top of you guys, because I'm going to be in the goggles, flying. Let me give you a preview of what you're in for. Oh yeah, oh yeah. You're going to be seeing me flying the copter live. I don't know of anybody who's done this before, so I'm super excited. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to try to tune this copter from scratch. I've got Betaflight 3.2 defaults RC5, release candidate 5. It's the latest one. I'm going to try and tune it from scratch and show you guys what I do when I tune. And we're just going to see how it goes. This is not something I've ever done before. I fully expect that we will be completely derailed by technical problems, so I hope you guys will forgive me for that if it happens, but now that I've said that, maybe it'll all go wonderfully. Chris is going to be monitoring the chat, so if you guys have any questions, I encourage you to ask them in the chat, because of course I'll be on the goggles and won't be able to see your questions. We're going to try something different here. You guys who watch Gamers live stream will be familiar with it. I wasn't familiar with it until I watched some Gamers live stream. I thought it was a good idea. So there's a thing that YouTube has called Super Chat. And the way it works is when you leave your chat message, then you pay like $1 or $2 or however much if you've been meaning to give me some money but you haven't wanted to sign up for Patreon, this is a chance. Instead of sending it to me in PayPal, you can send it to me here. And what that does is it puts your message in a separate window that Chris can see, and we get so many messages during these chats. They're just streaming by way too fast. Nobody can keep up with them all, especially, so this is a way that you could kind of help me out, help the channel out, and get your question set aside so we can make sure to answer it. But don't worry, we're going to be answering as many questions as we can. This is not a pay-for-play scenario. It's not like that. But if you were meaning to give me money anyway, well, now here's an easy way for you to do it. So to do that, there's a little $ icon down next to your chat window. It didn't used to be there. It's there now. You just click that, and then you figure it out. Okay. Everything looking good in the chat?
Yeah,
audio sounds good?
We've got some
Streaming?
people that are, audio's great. We've got some people saying they're not having video, but we've also got others saying they have video. We have video fine on our end, so...
Yeah, YouTube says it's my streaming is good. It says the health of my stream is good. I think if you're not having video, it's probably something on your end. So try refresh the page. And I am going to dive right into it. So, this is the copter that we're tuning today. This is the Catalyst Machineworks Norris, Ultralight, Superlight, I can never remember the name of it. The full parts list is down in the video description, so I'm not going to run that off to you, but just quickly, the motors are BrotherHobby Returner R2, 2600 kV, so they're not ultra powerful motors, and that's going to affect the way we tune a little bit. For example, on ultra powerful motors like the big 2306s and stuff, you often need lower P gains and definitely lower D gains. So something to keep in mind. The props we're using are Dow Cyclone 5045s, T5045s, and the copter as a whole, I think it comes in around, I think I remember it being around 320 grams without the battery. So it's a pretty light copter. Okay, let's hook it up to Betaflight and just take a quick look at what we got here. I want to mute that. You don't need to hear that. There we go. Oh no. Oh no. There you go. It was Inception for a minute. There we go. Okay. You should be seeing the Betaflight now. So, let's go to the PID tuning tab. And I want you to see this is completely defaults right here. These. And in fact, we've got the default rates as well. And the first thing I want to do is I want to adjust the rates. And tuning rates is an important part of PID tuning. But it's something that you don't have to do every single time you tune, because what I think most pilots do is they find rates that they like and that work for them, and they use the same rates pretty much on all of their quads. So for example, I know that for my freestyle quads, I like an RC rate of 155 and a super rate of 75, and an expo, I sometimes use an expo of about 15. And I guess any talk about PID tuning has to start with talk about the rates. If you look over here at the chart, you can get a sense of what the rates do. What I can start with is just set RC rate to 1 and super rate to 0 and expo to 0. And what you'll see is, pardon my air conditioner there behind that. That's going to just keep happening. What you can see is that the rates here are a straight line. So basically, all good?
Your head's covering the chart.
Oh, thank you. My head's covering the chart. Thank you. Hang on, I'll fix that. Hold on. Inception! There we go. That's why it's good to have Chris here. I've turned my head off. You can only see Betaflight now. Thank you for that. What you can see here is that the curve is not a curve, but a line, which means that as I deflect the stick, the rate that the copter will try to move will be linear with the stick movement. Okay? And at full stick deflection, you can see it's telling me I'll be at 200 degrees per second. And as I increase RC rate, the line stays a line, and the max deflection rate goes up. So basically, the copter will try and move faster and faster as you deflect the stick more and more. And the problem with that, as you may know if you've been doing this for any length of time, is that linear stick movement, it's not usually what we want. What we usually like is that the center of the stick be really precise, like 200 degrees per second, but then as you get the stick over to full deflection, you want the copter to go much faster, and that's where either expo or S rate comes in, super rates. So if I add super rates, what I want you to see is that the max deflection will go up. Let's set RC rate back to 1. So now our max deflection is 200 degrees per second. And as I add super rate, what you'll see is that the max deflection, the fastest the copter will spin when it's fully all the way over, will go up, but also the line will get some of a curve. Ignore this blue line here. That's, here, let me just set that to 0 to see if I can get rid of it. There we go. That wasn't good. It didn't like that. Let's put that back. Okay, the graph didn't like that. So what I want you to see as I add super rate is that the red line is now getting a curve to it, and it is also the max deflection is going up. Now it's to 500 degrees per second. So super rate both increases your max stick deflection and it adds a little bit of expo where the center of the stick will be kind of precise and soft and slow moving, and as you bang the stick further over, the copter will start moving a lot faster. So you got to just figure out where you like that, right? What I think most people are going to like some S rate or some expo to put curve in there. Some racers I've heard of flying with strictly linear curve, just RC rate, no S rate or expo, but most people, and especially freestyle pilots, if you fly freestyle, you probably want minimum 800 or 900 degrees per second. That's 3 turns per second roughly, a little less. You probably want minimum 800 or 900 degrees per second so that you can do those awesome looking snap rolls and flips and stuff. And you might be closer to 11 or 1200 degrees per second. And if your stick was linear, then you would have to make the tiniest stick movements to keep to just fly the copter normally, and that wouldn't work for you. So you're going to want some curve. Now there's one more thing I want to show you, and that's the difference between S rate and expo. So let me put my S rate back to, oh yeah, I like it at 0.70, 0.70, and 1.55. Okay, this is how I usually fly freestyle copters. What I want you to see then is if I add RC expo, what it's going to do is it's going to flatten out the center of the stick, but the full stick deflection rate is going to stay the same. You see how it's 1033 degrees per second. When I move my stick all the way to the edge, that's how fast the copter will try to spin. If I add RC expo, notice that the curve starts to flatten out, but 1033 degrees per second is still the max stick deflection. So expo is a way of adding some softness to the center stick without affecting your full stick deflection range. Just turn this. So then you might ask, what's the difference? Why would I use expo versus S rate, right? It seems like expo is better because S rate is kind of messing with 2 things, whereas expo is only messing with 1 thing, right? And it seems like you should adjust those 2 things independently. And you're right about that. The difference is that expo has a different shaped curve than S rate, and many people prefer the feel of the S rate curve, and you just got to play with it. What I suggest you do is you tune with RC rate and S rate and leave expo at 0. So what you're going to figure out, let's say you know that you want to hit 1033 degrees per second at full stick deflection, and then if you find that your center stick is still too twitchy, right, what you can do is you can reduce RC rate, which will bring your full stick deflection down, but then increase S rate to put it back where it was, and the more S rate you have, the more expo you get, but you're keeping your full stick deflection about the same. And then once you've got those numbers roughed in to about where you want them, and the stick feels about right, then if you still want to add just a little more softness to the center stick, then add some expo. Okay, Chris, how are we doing with questions? Any questions coming in with all that?
Yeah, we've got a few. Let's see. Johnny Vermont wants to know what filters are in use currently.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna get to that. So that's the next thing I'm gonna do after we get the rates dialed in.
Okay.
So hold that.
John Brath would like to know, can you explain the difference between set point and transition?
Yes. Okay, so since that's right here on the tab, let's do that next. Set point and transition. So I have a video I just did about set point and transition, and I suggest you go watch that video. It's one of the latest videos. It's just from 3 or 4 days ago. So I won't go into too much detail, but set point weight controls how sharply the copter tries to respond when you move the stick, when you are in the process of deflecting the stick to the side. So if the stick is stationary, It doesn't matter what set point weight or transition is, they're not doing anything, even if the stick is deflected. But when you push the stick over to get the copter to do something, a higher set point weight will make the copter respond more sharply. And that's a good thing. It makes the copter feel really ultra precise. But on the other hand, it also can be bad for if you want to fly really smoothly, because every little jiggle and wiggle of your fingers is translated into copter motion. So especially for freestyle pilots who want smooth flight, a low set point weight can be desirable. Although I've had some racers tell me they prefer a low set point weight because the smoother copter gets them get more consistent on their laps. So the best thing to do with set point weight is for you to play with it and just set it to 0 and go fly, and set it to max and go fly, and you will feel the difference. Hold on a second. I'm going to go back to so you can see me talking, so you're not just staring at Betaflight there. Exception. So yeah, and then set point transition controls the difference between when you deflect the stick and when you return the stick to center. So here's the problem with set point weight. When you increase set point weight, the copter can become so responsive that especially at the return to center, at the end of a snap roll or flip, you can get overshoot and bounce, okay? So set point transition, when you decrease set point transition, what it does is it says when the stick is deflecting, set point weight is normal, but when the stick is returning to center, set point weight is reduced. So you get the ultra sharp response when you deflect the stick, but you get the smooth, slow freestyle response when you return the stick to center. Basically, the way it works is I like to leave set point transition at 1. And what that means is stick deflection has the exact same behavior as stick return. And then set point weight, just play with it. Start with it at 0, then put it at max, fly both of those, and you will feel the difference. Figure out where you like it. And then if at that point you have bounce back on flips and rolls especially, then try reducing set point transition a little bit to help smooth out that bounce back on flips and rolls. What else do we got?
Volatronics wants to know, hi Volatronics by the way, we fly with him, would like to know why your yaw super rate on 0.75 is different than your others. Is there a reason, or is that just...
It's just how I like the feel of it. I like a little more expo, if you will, on the yaw super rate. I've just worked these out, and I find that the yaw axis, I like it just a little bit of a different feel. You kind of just got to play with it. I think that because you're managing the throttle, at least if you fly mode 2, you're managing the throttle with the same stick you're using yaw. I prefer to not deflect the yaw stick too much. I have a little harder time managing the throttle when I have to really push yaw over, and especially in sharp turns, right? That's where you're both yawing and managing the throttle. So I just like a little bit of. Some people do prefer to have all 3 rates the same, and that's especially useful if you do a lot of moves that combine yaw and roll, for example. Coordinated stuff. And if you're doing those moves, you know the move where the pilot goes zoop zoop zoop, like, you know, flips on 3 axes one after the other. Having the muscle memory for those moves be exactly the same can be helpful, but these are just the rates I've landed on that feel good for me. And once you're used to the rates, it can be a little hard to adjust to them. I have 2 sets of rates that I use. These are the rates I use on my freestyle copters, and I've just recently started using much lower rates for racing, and transitioning between them is a little tricky. So let me just say, I like set point weight higher than 0. I'm going to set my set point weight to 1, and that's because I've played with that before, and I know that's approximately where I like to start with it. And you just got to, that's not a right or a wrong thing, that's just a feel thing, and you just got to know where you like it. Betaflight recently changed the default to 0. I still prefer it at 1. What else we got, Chris?
G-Force would like to know, what is TPA and how do you determine when to adjust it?
So TPA gets rid of P-term oscillation at high throttle. You should start with no TPA. Let's see if we actually have any where's TPA in this version of Betaflight? There it is. So they've got just the tiniest bit of TPA in there. If you have oscillations just at high throttle, adding a little TPA can help with it. And I think the default of 10%, it's not a big deal. If you really want to try and tune, you could set it to 0. On most modern copters, I don't think that's going to be a big deal. But if you have oscillation just at high throttle, adding a little bit of TPA can help with that. And I have a video about TPA if you want to search for more information.
Mark Barenbrock would like to know, do you add any throttle expo at all? He's talked to people that race and say they add throttle expo.
This is a tough one for me. I started with throttle expo when I was a much younger flyer and I could not manage my throttle. And the problem is that as the copter's weight changes, as the throttle position at which you hover changes, the throttle expo point also changes, and you have to readjust it for every copter. And I found that I got much more consistent results, especially flying different copters, by simply not using any throttle expo. However, I can see, especially if you have a really high-powered copter where the hover point is 25%, that using throttle expo can give you more resolution, and especially if you're racing, you really want that resolution. My experience going to lower rates definitely sold me on the fact that having additional resolution, you can race with freestyle rates, but you're much more precise and smooth with very, very low rates. And I could certainly see adjusting throttle expo, especially if you're a racer. You just need to know that you have to adjust it for every single one of your copters based on their weight, and what you should adjust it based on is the throttle position that you cruise at, not your hover point, but your cruise throttle position. So if you have 60 degrees of up tilt, you're going to hover at 20% throttle. But by the time you're cruising on the track, you're going to be at 40-45% throttle. That's where your throttle expo center point should be, and it can give you a little bit more control. Yeah, I don't personally use it, but if I were more into racing, I might find myself start using it. Let's take a couple more, then we'll put this copter up. How are we doing?
Doing good. Let me apologize to Yannick here. I'm not going to say your last name, Yannick. It's tough and I don't want to murder it. So Yannick would like to know, is it true that Yaw P gain helps reduce the copter drifting on a turn?
Yes. And one of the first things I do when I start tuning is I increase Yaw P gain. Yep.
Easy.
How are we doing? One more? Yep. One more, then one more.
Do rates for True X or Stretch X differ? And that's from Cute Bunny Ears.
Yeah, so the copter's geometry does affect the rates. The rates are what the copter will attempt to achieve. And if you set the rate to 300 degrees per second or 1,000 degrees per second, and you hold the stick, and you just let the copter go, don't do that. But eventually the copter would hit 1,000 degrees per second or whatever, and it would just kind of stay there. But the thing is that the copter has to accelerate to hit the rate, and on a quick move, like a single flip or roll, the copter spends a substantial proportion of that move accelerating into it, and a smaller copter with a tighter geometry is going to accelerate faster. Okay, so although two copters with the same rates will hit the same angular rate, the smaller one will get there faster, and therefore it will take less time to complete the flip or roll. It'll seem like it has higher rates even though it doesn't. So what I do on my copters is I start with the same rates, and most of the time I don't even adjust them. But then if I really do want to make absolutely sure that like the roll and the pitch axis are the same, I'll just do some flips and rolls, and maybe I'll check out the high def footage and see if one is slower and adjust slightly. And it is true that a stretched X will be a little slower on the pitch axis than on the roll axis. Okay, so then let's get to the question about the filter settings, because filters are the next thing that I adjust. And I'm going to shortcut this a little bit to save you guys some boredom. What you should do to adjust your filters is, number one, you should take the biquad and set it to PT1. And then, oh, hang on, no, I'm sorry. In the configuration tab, you should enable dynamic filter. Everyone should do this. If you have an F3 board, you need to set your copter to 4K and 4K. F3s can run 8K and 4K. So on an F3 board, you can run 8K, 4K, but the Betaflight devs do not recommend it. It will look like your CPU utilization is okay, but you see down here in the bottom, CPU load 5%. That's because I'm on an F4 board. If on an F3, if you run 8K, 4K, it'll look like your CPU utilization is okay, and maybe it is, but sometimes there will be spikes in utilization that you can't really anticipate. So the devs recommend 4K and 4K if you're running dynamic filter on an F3 board. Since I'm running an F4 board, I can run 8K and 8K, no problem. So you're going to enable dynamic filter. Everyone should do that, period. Then, in the PID tuning tab, on the filters tab, you're going to change biquad to PT1, there we go, and you're going to save, and you're going to go fly for a bit. And you're going to check for hot motors. Most people are going to be fine to do this. Your motors are not even going to be warm. if they weren't worn before. Guy went into the doctor, said, "Doctor, broke all my fingers. Will I be able to play the piano again?" The doctor said, "I think you'll be fine." He said, "Good, I never could play the piano before." I messed that joke up. But if your motors were cool before, they'll be cool when you go to PT1. Almost everybody can do this. Then you're going to start disabling your gyro notch filters. You're going to take notch filter 1 and set the frequency to 0. And you're going to go fly some more, and you're going to see if your motors get hot. And don't just fly with a brand new set of props that are perfectly balanced. Fly with some old janky beat up props that are off balance, because that's what's going to bring the hot motors out. And then if your motors are still cool, you're going to go and turn off gyro notch filter 2. And I think that most everybody should be able to do this no problem. Am I still? Yeah, I am. Okay. Most everybody should be able to do this no problem. Okay? But some people are not going to be able to get those gyro notches disabled, and you're just going to have to stop, and that's where your copter is. Okay? Now this is where I pretty much start every tune. I don't even go fly. And someday I'm going to smoke motors because of that, but I haven't yet. But I think most modern copters can do this. The next thing you can do is you can disable the D-term notch filter. And this is the risky one that a fair percentage of people cannot do without smoking motors. And again, be careful, because you'll fly on a perfectly fresh set of props, and you'll fly and your motors will be fine, and then the minute you break a prop or bend a prop, then you smoke a motor. You're done. So be careful, and don't blame me if you smoke a motor. But this is where I'm going to start this tune to save you guys watching me go fly for a little bit, do some punch outs, do some flips rolls. Nope, the motors are cool, etc. Now that should answer the question about filters. How we doing?
Oh, we're doing good. Actually, there was another filter question that was applicable. Oh, Mystery79 wants to know, how does the dynamic filter work?
The dynamic filter is a notch filter, which means it's like a low pass and a high pass combined. Or a low pass and a high pass combined. Band pass. It's a band pass, yeah.
Certain bands are allowed
Yeah.
to pass.
And basically, if you have a noise peak at a certain frequency, the dynamic filter homes in on the frequency where the noise is peaking and slices it out perfectly. That's basically what it does. It just dynamically does this 1,000 times per second or something, and it adjusts itself in real time. And the advantage of the dynamic filter is that, let's say you put a brand new set of props on, and you notice that the noise peak is at 400 hertz. So you set a notch to cut 400 hertz. Great, perfect. Now you break a prop, you bend a prop, you bang up your motor, you break a standoff, something happens to change the resonant frequency of your quad. Suddenly the noise peak isn't at 400 hertz, it's at 350 or 450. Now that notch filter is completely useless and you have all this noise, and it gets into your gyro and your PID loop and your D-term, and you smoke a motor. So the notch filter can adapt, the dynamic filter can adapt to the actual noise that the copter is having. What do we got?
Mindless FPV. What's up, Mindless? He wants to know what characteristics show when I-term is too high.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Let's go ahead and put the copter up. We've talked for 25 minutes now. Let's go ahead and get the copter up. I'm gonna need to, hold on. Why is that? Let's plug this guy in. Let's see if my video comes back.
Alex, as he's asking what are low and high pass, and Alex, those are basically
Great.
ranges. Yeah, ranges on the frequency spectrum. So low is going to be on the low end of the spectrum. High would be high end, and you want to think of it like music with bass and treble. Bass being the low, treble being the high. The pass basically means those frequencies are allowed to pass through the filter. So when you hear a low pass, that means low frequencies are going to pass the filter. Mid and high frequencies would be filtered out. You appear to have video back.
Yep. And, oh, you guys are going to love this. Let's see. Yes. Oh, yeah. I'm so psyched to, this is why I did this whole thing. So we're going to put the copter up and we're going to fly it. And here's the thing. It's going to fly fine. It's going to look great. Default PIDs on Betaflight are great. So basically, whereas before we would tune by looking for bad things that were happening and trying to fix them. Now we're going to tune by playing with the numbers, and also you just need some guidelines for where to start. You don't have the guideline of bad things happening like you used to. So
Move to your left just a little bit. See if you can get
is that better?
yourself. Actually, the other way.
My left,
Your right.
my right. How's that?
One more.
How's that?
No more.
No more. How's that?
There you go.
Okay, perfect.
There, now you guys can see Josh's face.
How's the copter feed? Is it coming in good?
Yeah.
And you guys can see my PIDs on screen, thanks Betaflight OSD.
Oh.
What's-
Nope, it's back. You're good.
Oh, I was
Just a
worried
little-
about that.
A little trickery, a little glitchery.
Is
no
it
big
dropping
deal.
out or is it staying
No,
in?
it's staying. I think it just dropped once.
Okay, I got this copter at 800 milliwatts to try and keep it up. So let's just do some, I'm going to do some fast passes. Look for oscillation. Not really. The OSD is dropping out a little when I punch the throttle. So no real oscillation. Let's see. Let's do some punch outs. I'm going to look for drift on the nose during punch outs. So watch when I cut the throttle at the top of this punch out. You see the copter yaws to the right and noses down slightly. So, yeah, just the tiniest bit. It's really quite good. That's certainly something to try to fix. There, just the slightest bit. Let's do some sharp turns to look for prop wash oscillation. Little bit of prop wash oscillation. I'm not sure as I would really complain too much about that. It's really flying too good, honestly. It'd make my job easier. I asked Random offered to bring some quads for me to tune if this one flies too good and the tuning is too easy. The other thing we can do is flips and rolls.
Or you can throw the PIDs out.
Yeah.
Make it fly there.
I'm going to look for bounce back at the end of flips and rolls. Now this is freestyle rates. I think freestyle tuning is in some ways has a few more steps than race tuning, because racers I don't think care as much about crisp stops at the end of flips and rolls. How often do they really do flips and rolls? They might do a split S over a gate, or they might just do a kind of a yaw turn. A lot of them don't even split S the gates. They fly over the gate and they yaw turn around and go the other way. So I'm going to be doing a freestyle tune, and it's really looking pretty good. Crisp stops there. Let's do pitch. Little bounce on pitch. I'll do it again so you can see it. No, it wasn't really there that time. Part of the challenge here is that I'm used to softening the stop with my fingers. You probably can't really see that. And it's a little hard to get a really abrupt stop. So you can see how I didn't quite return the stick to center there? I'm not quite returning the stick to center at the end of the move, and that helps soften the end of the move. And that's how really good freestyle pilots always look like their tune is perfect. It's what you're doing with the sticks as much as anything else. So I'm going to bring it in for a landing.
So it looks like the FPV feed may have a little bit of chop, jitter, and stuff. They're saying they may need a little delay on it. I don't know if it's something we can add while live.
Well, there's the OSD is dropping out when I raise the throttle. Is it looking smooth here? Can you tell?
It's pretty smooth, and then it'll just kind of clean, kind of hold up, and then come back.
That's my video encoder, I bet.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to solve that right now. That's going to be one of those technical difficulties that we're just going to have to try to work around. And we'll do that. Yeah, I think we're just going to keep working past that. So here's what I like to do when I tune. And hang on, let me turn the quad around so you guys can see better.
They're saying when you get to the birdhouse, it gets bad, if that helps.
There you go, now you can see better. So what I like to do first with every new tune is, with yaw, I think the default yaw gain is way lower than I like. And I like to raise yaw. That's the wrong axis, hang on, there we go. So, yaw P gain, I'm going to take it up. No, hang on. What am I doing wrong here? Pitch. P gain. There we go. Hold on. Yaw. There, I got it. And I'm going to take it from 70 up to like 100. And I think if you guys haven't tried this, try this. It's very hard to break anything by doing this. And I think you'll immediately feel like the copter flies better if you raise your yaw P gain. So now I'm going to go fly, and I'm going to do some moves that require a little bit more precise turning. What I'm going to look for is increased oscillation in turns. That would be a sign that maybe this wasn't good, or random sort of vibration while I'm flying. So let's do some of this.
One of the video guys, the guys that's familiar, said that we could possibly try dropping one of the other feeds if we had to.
Yeah.
Like it's processing U and the FPV and everything else.
We could try turning off one of the cameras.
Yeah.
Hang on, we'll do that. So I'm going to do some stuff that requires a little bit of precise turning, and the copter will immediately start to feel sharper in those turns. Less slidey and more precise. This is something that is very difficult to demonstrate for you. You just have to try it. And what I like to say is that hang on. I have to do perfect landings because we're on stream.
He said it's fine when you're not moving.
It only breaks up when I'm moving. Okay. Yeah. Let me try turning off my face cam. I'm going to turn off my face cam and see if that improves it, because obviously you guys need to see the copter flying. That's really a big deal. Yeah, what I like to say is that low yaw P gain feels like the copter's kind of sliding or drifting, and you're constantly needing to push it into the turn, almost like you've got a car on ice. So, and I immediately felt, and we didn't see any bad signs, nothing negative happened, but the copter immediately, if I can raise the P gain on yaw with nothing obvious bad happening, I'm gonna do that. Let's raise it a little more even, and let's just see if we can make something bad happen. I don't think we're gonna. Betaflight 3.2 especially is so freaking good at handling P-term oscillation that it's almost impossible to get anything bad to happen. Actually, we're at 14.9 volts though. Hold on, I'll fly just a smidge more. Let's see if I can make something bad happen by raising yaw P gain. Is it any better? It's still flying really pretty well. Nothing bad is coming out.
It's looking good on this computer.
Yeah, it's just the...
And it froze once, but it seems to be all right than it was.
Okay.
So it's better, not great, but better.
Oh, well, okay. We'll leave it like that then. Let me go back to the head cam here. Oh, good, the sun's coming out too. Now we're gonna get real hot. Okay, so as far as tuning yaw P gain goes, my suggestion is just raise it. Just raise it. And if you see something bad start to happen, like oscillations coming out, then put it back down. But I immediately, I always just take it up from the default of 70 to like 100, 110, and just put it there, and the copter feels like it sharpens up a lot. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the P gains on pitch and roll. And I feel a little bit bad about doing this because, like, I want to tell you guys, you know, turn up the P term until it oscillates and then back it down and give you a metric. But the fact is, people have, it depends on your copter, but people have turned P gains on Betaflight 3.2 up to like 25, and it just, or 250, and it doesn't in many cases do anything bad. So it's more about feel than it is about anything else. The only thing I could say you can look for is like bounce back on flips and rolls, and that may come out. But if you're just flying, doing turns and stuff, the copter will just kind of start flying sharper and sharper and feeling better and better to a large perspective. What do you got in terms of questions? Got a lot of questions coming in?
Yeah, most of the chatter lately has been about the FPV feed, but I've got a bunch of banked questions.
Okay, what do you got?
Let's see if we can find something a little more applicable. One question that's come up several times is, what software are you using to broadcast?
Oh,
it's not really.
It's XSplit.
FPV
XSplit
related.
Broadcaster.
Okay, so it's not OBS, guys. It's XSplit.
Yep.
Let's see, some general issues. This is a good one. So this is from Erwin Brax.
Yep.
He's from the Netherlands, and most of the time where he flies, it's very windy. How do PID settings affect handling when it's very windy, and should he change anything according to the weather?
Well, I wouldn't bother trying to change my PIDs according to the weather. I hate the thought of having to tweak the PIDs like that. I would just I would try to find a general tune that works well for everything that's going on. If you've got a lot of buffeting wind, it's possible that you might need more I-term, I would say, to help hold the copter steadier and stiffer. I think if you had to use one adjective to describe the I-term, it would be stiffness, rigidity. The copter feels like it's flying very stiffly when the I-term is very high. And you can experience this. I highly encourage all you guys who are interested in tuning to play with the P and the I-term. Don't play with the D-term as much because you can smoke motors if you get out of control with it. But take your I gain and just crank it up to 200 or whatever the max is and go fly, and you'll feel the difference. I would say in a very windy environment I might try to get higher I-term. Some people argue that you should use more D-term because it helps the copter respond quickly to those buffeting changes. But I think the D-term is largely driven by the motor noise, that the ability to raise D gain is limited by the fact that the motors will get hot if they get too much gyro noise amplified by the D-term. And so I don't think that wind conditions would really drive that for me.
Well, this is an interesting one on I-term. It's from No Bull But D-Bull FPV, and he wants to know, how do you keep the quad low while racing? Is it camera angle? Because he's been told if lowering I-term on pitch can help with your height. Your flight height, and he doesn't understand how that could make a difference.
Yeah, I don't either. Hang on, I'm walking over.
I don't know if you can hear him, but he says he doesn't understand how that could make any type of a difference either.
Yeah, so I don't. I'll try to make that make sense. Especially if you're racing with a lot of up tilt, the pitch angle is a lot of the way you control your altitude. So if you've got a lot of up tilt, you're going to have high throttle. And then as you pitch back, your copter will gain altitude because of the way the vector, you got more downward facing vector. And so, you know, when you're flying like 60 degrees up tilt, a lot of the times your throttle will stay high, and if you need to gain altitude, you'll just pitch back a smidge and you'll gain altitude. And it's very, very sensitive, and that's maybe why the racers are using throttle expo. So it's possible, I could see a relationship between pitch and altitude, but I'm not sure why lowering I gain on pitch would affect that. I don't know. It doesn't really ring for it. Seems like to me like you might want to increase I gain on pitch to cause the copter to be stiffer, and therefore more consistent and predictable. Hold better. Yeah.
Christian Bianchini would like to know, is this tuning applicable for Betaflight 3.2 only, or can you apply it to older versions?
No, the same procedures apply to all versions. There are some features like the dynamic filter that you won't have on older versions, but the process of tuning P's, I's, and D's and so forth is going to be basically the same.
MJ Steely, any thoughts on putting multiple rates onto switches, i.e. race switch, freestyle switch, etc.?
Yep. I would have said no to that some time ago before I tried flying with low rates. And I mean low rates like 300 degrees per second. And I was so skeptical when my friend who's a racer was like, dude, you got to try this. I was like, I'm fine. I think consistency is more important. That my rates should be the same on all my copters so my muscle memory is consistent. And he said, no, dude, seriously, you got to try this. And I turned the rates on one of my, I've been racing this quad all day. We had just for practice, not at a competition. And I turned the rates for the quad down to like 300 degrees per second, and I hated it for like 2 laps. And then I just got this big grin on my face because I could totally feel how much better I was flying after the first 2 laps where I hated it and got used to it. And I was like, oh shit, he's right. So yeah, I could certainly see having race rates and freestyle rates on a switch.
Cool.
All right.
So we've got a couple more, and then we've got a guy that actually asked for a demonstration, so I think that's
right.
pretty applicable to what we're doing.
Okay.
But Kyle would like to know, what would you say the highest you should ever bring the P gain on any of the terms is?
I don't know anymore. I mean, normally I would say raise it, and if you start to see excessive oscillations, especially for prop wash in sharp turns, that's where it'll come out mostly, then back it down. And that's still true, but these days you can raise it so freaking high. Let me give you an example. You can raise it so freaking high and almost nothing bad happens. So you just gotta kind of, I confess that a lot of times I turn my P gains up by like 25% just on principle. And if nothing bad happens, then I just go fly. And I don't do a lot of feeling out for where the like optimal P gain is. But I've heard of people turning it all the way up to like 255 and not having a problem. So I just don't know what the highest it should be is. Hang on. So let me go back to the, there we go. And let me put my camera back on. So what we'll do is this.
Volatronics and Tim, I've got your guys' questions logged. J10 also, just so you guys know.
So let's just do this. I'm going to take the roll. Pitch is at 60, and I'm going to take it up to 70. Let's take it up to 70. And roll is at 40. Let's take it up to 45. And I don't think you guys are going to, oh sorry, no, 55. And I don't think you guys are going to see any difference in how the quad flies. I'll probably feel it. Oh, and also I didn't save. Hold on, I got to put yaw back where it was. If you don't save those changes when you unplug the battery, they get disabled. In case you're wondering, I'm using in-flight adjustments to adjust these things with switches on my transmitter. You can kind of see me flipping the buttons down here, I guess. And I've got a video on how to set that up. In-flight adjustments, go search my channel. I'm going to open up the OSD, and I'm going to go to save and exit, and that will save those PIDs. And now I've increased the roll and pitch P gain. Let's see if you can see a difference in how the quad flies. I doubt that you will. Let's do some punch outs to look for oscillations. Oh, I did see a little more oscillation there, didn't I? Did you guys see that? Yep, I did see a little more oscillation. Now let's do some sharp turns. No. Really no change to the prop wash oscillation handling. And I'm not actually convinced that full throttle, that oscillation on the throttle punch wasn't there before. That could just be camera vibration. This is a RunCam Micro, and it's just in a little 3D printed mount. It's possible that's just camera vibration. The way to check for camera vibration is to put a GoPro on the quad. And if you see the vibration in the FPV cam but not in the GoPro, I heard something tangled in my props, then it's not the copter, it's the camera. Okay, so we've raised those, and if I do some, let me just glance at the quad, make sure nothing's in my props. No, it seems okay. If I do some sort of tight flying in the trees, I think it will feel better for me. It'll feel sort of sharper, more precise. Or another way to put it is that the quad just goes where it's pointed. You're not having to fight to get it to go somewhere.
PCM, he's running the Cyclone, Val Cyclone prop.
See, I'm liking this better, but I don't think you guys can see a difference. So you guys can see the, oh, wasn't that lucky? You guys can see the process that I'm going through to find the best thing, but I'm not going to take your time up doing it, but I guarantee you I could keep raising these P gains really freaking high and nothing dramatically bad would happen. So this is the blessing and the curse of Betaflight 3.2 and 317 too, to a lesser degree. That it flies so freaking good, it does make it hard to tune. It's more about just finding a feel than anything else. let's get some questions, and then we're going to look at the I gain, the I terms next.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, so scroll back up here. And this may be a good time for that I term, the mindless, where he asks what characteristics show when I term is too high.
Yep. So too high I term will be a very stiff feel to the copter. Too low I term is much easier to demonstrate. So let me got more questions to get before we dive into that?
Oh, sure. What's the highest you should ever bring the P gain on any term? Kind of touched on that already.
Yeah, touched on that.
How do you put rates on a switch? It's another video.
Okay, so I would say look at my video on in-flight adjustments. Actually, that is where that video is going to be. And I will... Oh, I can't show you because I'd have to pick up the quad and connect it. But it is an in-flight adjustment, and it's actually a little bit weird how you do it. I don't have a video about that. But it's in-flight adjustments is the short answer.
So Little Breezy FPV says his motors get hot with default PIDs. Should he lower the D gain before trying the dynamic filters?
So here's what I suggest if your motors get hot. Set your pitch and roll D gain to 0. Don't fly that way. It's just a diagnostic tool. And if your motors are still hot with your pitch and roll D gains at 0, then it's not your PIDs or your vibration or your filtering that's the problem. It's you have a motor screw touching the windings. Your if you have BL-Heli 32, I've heard of some people getting hot motors that were fixed by changing the motor PWM rate from 24 to 48 kilohertz. And sometimes it's just, I don't know, you could be just overpropping the motors, although that's less likely today because motors are pretty beefy. But if you're flying a small quad with like 1407 motors, you may just be overpropping them. But the primary diagnostic tool for hot motors is set your D gains to 0 on pitch and roll. And if the motors are still hot, then you know it's something between the ESC and the motor and the prop. It's not to do with the filtering and the PIDs and the gyro. If the motors don't get hot, if you set the D gains to 0 and the motors now are cool, you know that it's either filtering, you need to soft filter with the dynamic filter or the notch filters, you need to soft mount your flight controller. Maybe you have a motor that's just got a shaft that's out of balance or something like that. It's a vibration issue.
Okay.
All right.
Let's see. So AA wants to make a statement / question. Would you say that you can play with the P and I, be cautious with D?
Absolutely. If D gain is too high, you will smoke motors, period. D gain amplifies and feeds back noise into the system. That's its job, and that's why it's so good at dealing with certain types of oscillation, but it's also why it smokes motors if it's too high. Yep.
That answers another question we had, which was about the motors. So awesome.
Okay.
Can too high of an I term cause wobbles?
It used to do that, but I haven't seen it do that recently. Let's play with the I term and find out. So, hang on. We'll go back to the copter. And what I'm going to do is, hold on. Let me just, again, turn so you guys can see the menu better. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the I term on roll. It's at 40, and I'm going to turn it up to a really high number. Like 80.
Wow.
And on pitch, oh sorry, that's yaw. On pitch, there we go. It starts at 50 and I'm going to take it up to 100. That beeping is to warn me that my PIDs are changing. Once upon a time I forgot that I had in-flight adjustments set up and I had my switch bumped. And as I was flying the copter, the P term would go down, 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 down to 0, at which point the copter would crash. And I couldn't figure out why when I first started flying everything was fine, and then 20 seconds later the copter crashed. So I put a little beeper on there to warn me that my PIDs were changing. So now the I gain on roll and pitch is super high. Let's see if we get any oscillations. I bet we don't. See, so no oscillations. The copter has a stiffer feel to my sticks, kind of almost a robotic feel. It's not bad, but it feels a little reluctant to turn into the turns, as to how I would describe it. I can adapt to it, but it doesn't feel sort of loose and nimble and free. It feels reluctant, like it's kind of fighting me. Now if I do the punch out, notice that at the end of the punch out there's still just a little bit of wobble, although it's less than it was. It looks like it rolls left slightly, but it doesn't yaw or pitch. I'll do it one more time. That's improved it a little bit, but look how high we had to turn the I gain, to get just that tiny bit of improvement on that throttle chop. I'm going to show you another way to deal with that in a little bit. But nothing bad is happening. No oscillation, nothing like that. Just a feel to the copter. Maybe you guys can see, especially if I do like try and do some little more precise moves like through the trees. Especially at the moment where you turn into the turn, it feels kind of reluctant, like I have to push it. I can still fly it just fine though. Boom! You like that? So I'm gonna put that back. We're at 15.1. We can fly this battery a little more. I'll tell you what. I'm gonna unplug the battery and that'll reset the PIDs since I didn't save them. And I'll show you how to fix that punch out problem on when I chop the throttle. You got any questions while I go do that?
Let's see. Trophy the Drifter wants to know, on this particular quad you're tuning, do you have anything soft mounted? The flight controller, motors, etc.?
The flight controller is on O-rings.
The flight controller's on O-rings, guys. I don't know if you could
Yeah,
hear
the flight
anything.
controller's on O-rings, but that's it.
Had a request for a turtle mode demo. We can try to do later, maybe.
So I have a video on how to set up turtle mode. I don't know what version of BLHeli is on these ESCs, so I'm not sure whether it will work. But I do have a video on how to set up turtle mode, and of course it demonstrates it as well. So check my channel for that.
Aaron Shore would like to know, when you raise P-term on roll axis, should you also raise it in the same amount on the pitch axis as well?
So when I'm doing my rough tuning, when I'm roughing in the very beginning of the tune, I will usually keep pitch and roll proportional to each other. If I've got a pure X copter that's symmetrical, I think that it has to do with the weight distribution. If the weight distribution is very centralized, then pitch and roll P gain are going to be more similar, and same for I gain. If the weight is more spread out, then you're going to have like more P gain because the pitch axis is more spread out, more P gain on pitch. What I'll usually do is I will change them proportionally to each other. So if they, if I've got a typical copter with more weight spread out on the pitch axis, P gain might be 25% higher on pitch than on roll, and so I'll just bump them up proportional. And then if I want to really fine tune, like for example, if I've got prop wash oscillation that I can't get rid of, I might look at black box to figure out which axis is oscillating the most, and then adjust. I would lower the P gain or raise the D gain just on that axis to clean up the prop wash oscillation. But in the beginning, I don't think you have enough precision to tell whether a problem is happening on pitch or roll, and I'm trying to change the general feel of the copter, and I'll move them both together.
Okay. So let's see, Martin from Denmark says hello and asks, do you use D-Shot 1200 or can you not tell any difference between the different D-Shots?
I have one copter with D-Shot 1200 on it, and the problem is I haven't tried doing like a side-by-side to see if I could tell the difference. I doubt there's any difference in flight feel from the pilot's perspective. There might be some difference in handling, like you might be able to get slightly better prop wash handling with D-Shot 1200. I haven't done any real tests to find out. I think it's probably largely a theoretical benefit. But hey, we like theoretical benefits, higher numbers.
No doubt. And it does look like some people are suggesting it might have something to do with the diversity switching on the FPV stream, saying it seems like when it switches is when it's freezing. I don't know if that cues you into anything.
I can set it to only use the one. Let's try that while we do the next question. I'll change that. We are, by the way, hang on, sorry about that, guys, exception. We are using Clearview, by the way, so let me try and fix that. Hold on.
Daniel's got actually, this is a really good question.
What's the question?
Daniel Hubert, and this is a great question, Daniel. He wants to know, before tuning, do you remove the filters? Or do you activate the filters and then tune?
I will usually tweak the filters right off the bat before I tune, because I'm pretty confident that most copters I'm going to be able to disable a lot of those filters, and I want to tune with the filters as they're going to be. So yeah, I try and get the filters how they're going to be first. However, sometimes what'll happen is that, hang on, what'll happen is that I need to raise D-gain, for example, to get rid of prop wash, and the motors start getting hot, and I'll have to put the filter back to get the D-gain where I need it. So sometimes that happens as I'm tuning. I need to go back. Oh, I went too far. Always right antenna. I believe that is the right antenna. Seems like it would be the right. It's on the right side of the. Yeah, okay. So always right antenna. And save, then exit. So we're going to try and see if that helps, and maybe I'll be able to turn my head cam back on. You guys can see my pretty face.
Yeah. Thanks for that suggestion, guys. Hopefully that'll work out good for us.
Let me plug the copter back in so we can get a video feed and see if it comes back up. Alright, we should have a video feed. There we go. We'll see if that fixes it. So now my P gains are increased. My I gains are back to defaults, and actually here's how I deal with I gains. Oh, hang on. I gotta plug this guy in, so hold on. Where did my USB go? There it is. So there's a new thing in Betaflight as of, this was in 3.17, and some of you may know about it. It is anti-gravity gain. And what anti-gravity gain does is, here's where you set it. What anti-gravity gain does is it increases, it substantially boosts the I term just when the throttle is moving. Because, and I, not to brag, but I suggested this feature. I'm proud of it. It's always nice when somebody thinks you had a good idea. I noticed that the #1 time when the I term needed to be boosted was when you were raising or lowering the throttle. And what happens there is the aerodynamic situation of the quadcopter is changing so fast that the I term just cannot keep up. The I term is slow and steady. That's its job, is to everybody just be cool. And sometimes you need to freak out. That's the right response to a situation. You see a bomb goes off right over there, go that way. But sometimes you just need to be cool, and that's the I term's job. The I term simply could not keep up with the changing aerodynamic situation when you punch or chop the throttle. And so what I did was, why don't we just, when the throttle moves, boost the I term? And that helps solve this problem. What do you got? Okay. How many? 500. That's a good number. 500 people watching. And so that's what anti-gravity gain does. And so what on every single tune I do, I start with an anti-gravity gain of 3.5. And if I find that when raising or lowering the throttle, the copter doesn't just hold the nose rock steady, I raise it. I would raise it as high as 7 or 10 before I started thinking something else was up. Watch what a difference this makes in that behavior at the end when I chop the throttle at the end of a punch out. And by the way, you also have to go to configuration, and you have to enable anti-gravity, which you should. In my opinion, every quad should have this on by default with an anti-gravity gain of 3.5. There was a problem, I think there was a problem way back early in the development of this feature where it caused spin of death. But that's gone. I don't know anybody who's having a problem with it, and I would just turn it on and set it to 3.5 at the beginning of every tune. And the only reason I didn't do that is so you guys could see what a difference it's going to make. How are we doing for questions while I get this guy up in the air? Yeah, what do we got?
Let's see. Antonio Georgie Vaughn wants to know, actually it looks like I unfortunately only copied half his question. So
We'll
the
have to
copter
guess what the
slowly
rest
settles
be.
into orientation, mostly on pitch on the stick return. Is that a low P?
Slowly settles into orientation.
Like it's slow on stick return. And is that an issue of low P?
Well, I would check the set point transition, I think. Set point transition is the only thing I can think of that definitely affects stick deflection differently than stick return. So I would start by, if you have a very high set point weight and a very low set point transition, then that could cause that. Low set point weight actually makes the copter sluggish and smoother, but sluggish. So if you had a very low set point weight, then you would have sluggish into the move and at the stop. And if you had a low set point transition, it would cause sharp into the move and slow to stop.
Daniel Hubert wants to know, is it important having extra capacitors on your ESCs for filtering or tuning?
Depends on the ESC and depends on the quad. If you have indications that there's noise in your copter, thank you, Trina. If you have indications that there's noise in the copter, like noise in the video feed, like in my case, you can see the OSD is dropping out when I punch the throttle. Now that's because the ground wires on this flight controller are not, the video ground wires are not wired correctly. But if you have indications of noise that you can't solve any other way, then adding capacitors to the ESCs can fix it.
So video noise, yes. Tuning, that sort of thing, maybe
well,
not so much.
In terms of tuning, I'll give you an example. When I was tuning the Holy Bro Shuriken X1, which has a real problem with noise, it's just really noisy, I don't know why. Every time I would raise the throttle, I would get horrible video noise, and if you raise the D gain basically at all, then as soon as you punch the throttle, you get a desync and a spin of death. So that's a case where adding capacitors affected the tune because it was causing a spin of death. Why can I not, where am I? Why do I have to be over there? Oh, it's moved. I see. I see, the window moved.
Or is it, yeah?
Yeah, that's not centered on that. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
I've got the same camera. You can
Yeah,
notch it over.
Yeah,
the
no,
thing.
it's where it is on the screen in the, anyway, in XPlay. So now I'm going to show you guys, the only thing I've changed here is I have raised anti-gravity gain, and I want to show you guys what a difference it makes. Now I'm going to punch out and I'm going to chop the throttle. You see that the nose was almost rock steady there. No yaw left, no roll, just a little bit on the pitch axis. Almost rock steady. That's just a huge difference. I mean, it's small, but as proportional to what it was doing, it's a huge difference. The other thing you can do to test this is you can do this. Watch. You could do that with the throttle, and notice that the nose is not going crazy. Let me just give you a comparison there. Hold on. Oh well, close. Let's see if I can just change this from the rates. Let's see, where is it? It's going to be in PIDs, I guess. No. MISC?
It's still laggy. Can we
No.
lower the capture resolution or the bit rate?
Okay, well, let's go ahead and turn off my camera again. I'll do it. You got it? That'll probably help.
Which one? Logitech HD Pro?
It's number 1. It's Logitech HD Pro 1. No, it's just
I'll let
the...
you do it. Okay. Yeah.
It's just the computer. Well, there you go. We'll do the best we can. Yeah, I'm gonna need to bring the copter in to fix that, and I'm not gonna do that. So then, where can we go from here? I might even raise that a little more, to be honest with you. I wish I could find where anti-gravity gain was.
There was a question also about anti-gravity. Is the setting of 1 in anti-gravity, is that the lowest setting, and does that mean off? Or
yes,
is that...
exactly. A gain is a multiplier, and a gain of 1 means you're multiplying by 1, so that is off. Exactly. Let me get the quad here. I'm going to actually turn that up a little more, because I still get... There's really no reason, I think, not to turn this up. It only boosts it when you're jamming or chopping the throttle. I think it does a really good thing. It stiffens it up right when it needs to be stiff. So, what else?
Let's see. Vladimir wants to know how to determine and recognize physics oscillation and physical oscillation versus PID oscillation.
So physical oscillation, hang on, I don't want to accidentally unplug something while I'm trying to find where my copter plugs in. That's that. This one, I think. There we go, I got it. I guess physical oscillation would be like a loose standoff or something. I mean, usually you solve that through a physical inspection of the quad, and you find the problem. That's what I would say. I mean, but if you really need to troubleshoot that, what I do is I would turn the PIDs down. And if the problem goes away when you turn the PIDs way down, then it's a PID related thing. But those two things can interrelate. So
Micho FPV.
I'm going to turn my anti-gravity gain up to 5. Hold on one second. By the way, you guys may be wondering about changing anti-gravity threshold. Anti-gravity threshold controls how fast you have to move the throttle before the problem kicks in. And I don't suggest that most of us try and tune that, because you have no way of knowing when anti-gravity kicks in. So how can you tune it if you don't have feedback on when it is and isn't happening? I've suggested to the devs that they put an OSD indicator when anti-gravity kicks in, so you could tune this threshold. You move the throttle this fast and it doesn't kick in, and you move it this fast and it does kick in, and you could tweak it. But for now, since you don't have feedback on that, there's really no way for you to tweak it. So just leave that alone, and I'm going to raise anti-gravity gain to 5 and see if that improves the holding the nose. Okay, go ahead.
Micho just wanted to know, what is it that's smoking the motors when D-term is too high? Is frequency bringing the current up, or what?
Good question. Anytime you have electricity going through the motors, that electrical energy has to do some work. And the work that it should do is it should turn into mechanical motion of making the motor spin, right? But if the ESC is pushing current through the motor and the motor cannot spin, then that energy has to go somewhere and it turns into heat, okay? It's just like if you have some kind of a bearing and it's got lots of lube and it's spinning smoothly, it stays cool. But if it runs out of lube and now it's grinding and rubbing, it gets hot, right? It's the same thing. When the D-term gets really high, the ESC tries to make the motor speed up and slow down way faster than it can physically do. And so then that turns into heat and it smokes the motor.
When you punch out and the quad dips to one side, is there a particular cause for that?
Yeah, it's that the aerodynamic situation that the quad is in, the balance of aerodynamic forces on the quad is changing rapidly as the motors change speed. That's what's happening. That's the answer. And the PID loop is not able to keep up because of the gains. I'm not sure that was a great answer, but it's the right answer. Got one more?
Let's see. I had one back.
All right, I got the camera off again, so hopefully the feed will be okay. Like I said, well, this is a first attempt. So now I've got the anti-gravity gain up to 5, and let's do those throttle punches again and see how the copter behaves. The copter does not feel like it's flying any differently except when I'm punching the throttle. So You see the nose is even steadier now when I do that. I hope you can see that. I hope the video is working okay. It's even steadier when I do that. And if I chop, it's really just sort of dead steady almost. And so that's where I like anti-gravity gain to be. The next thing I would do in my tuning, I've got P's roughly where I want them. I could try to fine tune them based on feel, raising pitch and roll P gain, looking for oscillations to come out, but they probably won't. So I could fly, it's really great to set up air gates. I don't have air gates out right now, but to set up air gates and try and like fly a pattern through air gates, make sure you have some sharp turns and some sweeping turns, which will challenge you in different ways. And as you raise the P gains, see if the copter feels more confident in your ability to precisely bring it online and make it go exactly where you want it to go. That was risky. Watch for oscillation to come out as you raise the P gains. For example, there. This copter has very good prop wash handling, to be honest with you. You're getting a little bit of prop wash there. But if I'm just the littlest bit forgiving on the sticks, the prop wash is just non-existent. See, there was no prop wash there. I've got the mic set up so you guys can hear the motors as well. It's actually difficult to see oscillation in the FPV feed. You can definitely see it in the HD feed better, but you can hear it best of all. And I hope you guys are hearing the oscillation, the motor noise. As I go through these turns, you can hear the oscillation as it settles in right there versus here where it's smooth. And all that is I'm just being a little bit more forgiving on the throttle, a little bit less aggressive as I go through the turn, and it's getting rid of that oscillation. So I could certainly raise D gain to try and get rid of some of that oscillation, but honestly I'm not sure I would bother, because as long as I can manage it with the sticks, then I'm not going to worry about it too much. Let's do it anyway. But this is where if you're not careful, you smoke a motor, and that's why I might not try to be super aggressive about this if I weren't doing a demonstration. What do we got?
Dave wants to know, can you raise anti-gravity too much? Can bad things happen if you raise it up too high?
I think it's pretty hard to do that. It's only active when you move the throttle quickly, and most of the time you're not moving the throttle quickly. And if you think about the times when you're jamming or chopping the throttle, the place where it could theoretically get you into trouble is if you're going through a sharp turn and you cut or jam the throttle coming out of into or out of the turn, then the copter, if you had it really high, the copter might suddenly stiffen up, and it might change your flight line in a way that you didn't expect. So yeah, I think, but I commonly fly with it at 3 to 5, and that just fixes every problem the copter has with throttle punches, and that's not high enough to really cause a problem. If you have to get it up to 10 or 12 or 15, or it goes all the way up to 30, then something else is wrong with your quad, like you have a damaged ESC or a damaged motor. That's what I would say. If it had to get super high, I would think something was wrong with the quad.
Joshua, good name by the way, wants to know, when using the dynamic filter, is it best to tune your static notch filters at first if your noise floor among that spectrum is high?
No. What you should be, you should not be tuning your static notch filters, because you should be turning them off. And letting the dynamic filter do the work. If you need to leave them on, then you can tune them, but my goal would be to turn them off and then not have to tune them at all. How was the video okay on that last one?
No, it's still not. Doesn't seem like it's still getting much better.
Oh man, and now I have it locked on the right hand antenna, but it doesn't matter. The right hand antenna is an X-Air patch, and it's got a 120-degree beam width, so it's hitting that whole field. It must have something to do with the encoding, or...
Yeah, I was trying to watch it while you were flying, and I couldn't really see any correlation between...
Yeah, so I will say this. I am doing a local DVR recording of this, and I'll push that up to the internet. Okay. So if you guys are having trouble seeing some of this on the live stream, I'm going to punish you for coming to the live stream. I shouldn't do that. Well, I'll upload the local DVR recording, which of course is perfect. So you could go back and check if you want to later. Oh, I tricked you into watching the video twice. Oh, smarter than I thought. What else we got?
Should PIDs differ, Jeff asks, and I'm guessing he means, like, say you've got a 4-inch, 5-inch, and 6-inch Alien. Would the PIDs be different, or could you copy those over?
No, they're going to be different, largely because the weight distribution and the geometry of the copter is different. So in general, you're going to have, I think you're going to have higher P gains on the larger quad because it needs more of a push to get it moving because it has a more spread out weight distribution.
Can we make that window smaller, the live stream window? Some people are saying that the size of the window may actually...
It's hard to imagine. I mean, the resolution is the same. Yeah. I can try shrinking it. But I don't think that's going to matter.
Probably a bit right.
I think it's my video encoder. I'm going to change it and we'll see how it works. But I think it's the capture device is having a little bit of problem, perhaps. We'll try though. It's worth a try.
Yeah, we're going to try a few things for you guys just to get the stream a little bit better. Keep in mind, it's our first time, so we're learning and we're working with it. We appreciate your guys' patience, and just keep asking questions so we can answer the questions whether you can see us or not.
Yeah. Here, I'll make the sticks a little bigger. All right. So then let's work up the D-gains and see what happens to the prop wash handling when we work up the D-gains. That's the last step in the tune, more or less. And this is the one where you, again, just to reiterate, you need to be really careful about not smoking your motors. But for you guys,
he's gambling, guys. Just for you. He's taking a chance on smoking his motors.
Well, you know, I'm a YouTuber now, so
it's all about the audience.
Yeah, you gotta. Okay, so now, okay, so I'm gonna fly with the PIDs just as they were, and I'm gonna do some sharp turns to bring out prop wash oscillation. Watch what I'm doing with the throttle. It's really so freaking good. I almost don't want to bother. But I'm going to do... Okay, so we are on pitch. We're going to bring pitch up from around 35 to around 45. And roll up from 30 to, let's say, 40.
Dave Mary, he answered your question on the anti-gravity. He said he doesn't think you can bring it up too much, really.
So now I've raised D-gain on pitch and roll, and let's look at how the prop wash, and listen especially to how the prop wash handling changes. Wow, it got even better. It's gotten better. If I even just there, which was a straight 180 back into myself, back into my own prop wash, it still got almost no oscillation. So that's an improvement. Let's just check the motors now. I'm gonna have to run over there before they cool down and check them to see if they're hot. Running over. And it's usually the back motors.
So Josh is checking the motors, and he said he usually notices the back motors.
Yeah, and Chris, feel that back motor. What do you think of that?
It's good and warm, especially compared to the front.
Yeah. So a question that people commonly ask is, how hot is too hot?
I was actually just going to ask you that.
Yeah. I would say if you put your hand on the quad, here, let me unplug this live quad that I'm holding in my hands and just jabbering. Safety first.
That's right.
Hang on a second. Was the video any better that time?
No, some people are saying it seems like when you fly slower, the video feed keeps up. I was watching it. I couldn't really tell. There were fast times it was working and slow times it wasn't. But
It's something to do with the encoder or the
lower
intake.
the capture resolution, even 320 by 240 is watchable.
We're gonna keep it as it is for now, and we'll try and fix it before the next live stream. And I will upload the full resolution, perfect DVR recording from my local hard drive, if you guys want to go back and check. Well, hopefully we're doing lots of Q&A too, so even if you kind of can't see the video, it's not the end of the world.
Plenty of people loving it.
Okay, great. So, hot motors, yeah. The question is, how hot is too hot? And I would say, if you hold the motor and you pinch it and it feels mildly uncomfortable, I feel like that's hotter than I want it to be. If you hold the motor and you go, ooh, oh, ah, ooh, you know what I mean? You're gonna kill something, right? That's too hot. But even if you touch it and it's like, yeah, that's a little warm, then I feel like that's on the edge, because if it's a little warm with perfect props, then the minute you bend or break a prop, you're going to smoke something. You don't want that. So I raised the D gains from 40 to 45, etc., and the motors are hotter than I'd like them to be. They're safe, and they might fly like that forever and with no problem, but I don't like to take chances. So now I have the choice of either backing down the D gains or putting back some of the filtering. Those are my choices. I took the D-term low pass off, and that's probably the next thing I would do, is I would put the D-term low pass back to the default. By the way, you guys should screenshot or write down the default numbers for the filters before you start removing them, because there's no way to get that back without resetting the quad, unfortunately. So write those down. But the next thing I would do is I would put the D-term notch back, and see if that kept the motors cool and let me raise the D-gain. But frankly, the performance of the quad, even back on the, with the D-gains around 30, 35, was so good, I would probably just fly it like that forever. Especially if it was a race quad. A little bit of prop wash here and there that you can kind of avoid it just with the sticks is going to be fine. And even if it was a freestyle quad, I might still leave it alone, just because with a little bit of carefulness on the sticks, just not go crazy with the throttle, you could really just avoid it that way. What do we got for questions?
A lot of folks want to know your comparison on tuning KISS versus Betaflight.
I can't really say, because I only tuned one KISS quad. I don't have a ton of experience tuning KISS, so I can't really say. I have most of my experience tuning Betaflight.
Okay. Let's see. A lot of comments about the feed.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a stupid question. Xian, I guess, hopefully I said your name right. He wants to know, is there some kind of math formula you can use to calculate the PIDs every time, or is that even possible?
Yeah, so there's, I shared this, I don't know if I did share it on my Facebook page. The PID controllers are not, we didn't invent them. They were actually invented for industrial process control. Like, you have a chemical reaction going on in a tank, and you need the temperature of the tank to stay constant so the chemical reaction works correctly. And you have a PID controller managing the temperature of the tank, right? And other things like that. So we didn't invent them. And there are mathematical algorithms for determining optimal PIDs. However, and some people have done some work at applying those to quadcopters. I just saw this recently, I think it was on the Betaflight Facebook group. A guy has a Python app that he wrote that'll take your black box file, and what it'll do is you just hover your quad and do a few little stick movements, and it measures the gyro and the RC command set point, and it determines how close they are to each other and gives you a metric for how close they are. Then you can adjust the P gains to try and get that as good as possible. I think that quadcopters are such a dynamic system that it's difficult to give a mathematically perfect number, because as soon as you pick a mathematically perfect number for one sort of flight condition, it won't be perfect for some other flight condition. And then the other thing is that different pilots like different feels to the way their quad flies. Some pilots will like a really high I gain, some pilots will like a lower I gain, for example. Some pilots like a looser feeling, smoother quad, some pilots like a really twitchy, sharp quad. And as long as you've got that subjective performance, nobody will be able to say these are the right PIDs, mathematically perfect.
Gorilla Drone says hello.
Hello, Gorilla Drone. I'm wearing your shirt.
Made it.
Gorilla Drone loves when I wear his shirts. They're great shirts.
Let's see. Oh yeah, soft.
Yeah, it's really nice. Feel that. Feel this.
Oh,
right here.
Hey, baby. Not on camera.
This
So,
isn't that kind of live stream.
yeah, this isn't that kind of live stream. We're gonna have to get some more super chat going for that to happen. Jacob Fries asks an interesting question. He says, is the PID tuning process different in acro or horizon?
Well, yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
That just, to me, is interesting because I didn't even think about maybe tuning in a mode.
Yeah. Yeah. So auto level modes are built on top of acro mode. So if your acro mode PIDs are not at least close to correct, then you can't get a good tune out of your auto level PIDs. The good news is that the default PIDs for Betaflight are pretty good. They're going to give a decent flight experience for a wide variety of copters, and that's nice. But if you've got something dramatically wrong with your acro mode PIDs, like the eye gain is so low and the copter's just drifting all over the place, then auto level isn't going to be able to help you with that. It can't do that. It's like it's like trying to balance an egg on a plate while you're in a race car that's going around a track. You just can't do it. So yeah, the tuning of the auto level PIDs, you've got the level strength. That's pretty much it, actually. You've got the level strength, which is how it's like a P gain on how hard the copter tries to get back to level when it's re-leveling itself. And if that number's too high, you can get oscillation and the copter can try to fly to the sky. If it's too low, the copter won't auto level aggressively enough, but it's pretty simple to tune because it's just one number. But here's the thing I'll say about that. People who fly in auto level mode, they go, oh, my copter's flying bad. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you have to tune in acro mode first if your copter's flying bad in auto level mode. And people who are flying in auto level mode don't want to fly or can't fly in acro mode, they're kind of out of luck. So if the default PIDs don't work for you in auto level mode, then, well, that's why you got to learn to fly in acro mode. Sorry, nobody should. If you're flying racing or freestyle, you shouldn't be learning in acro mode to begin with, or horizon mode. You should just be learning in acro. You shouldn't be learning in angle mode or horizon mode to begin with. You should be learning in acro mode. Just bite the bullet. Spend 5 or 10 hours in the simulator. You'll be ready to fly, and then you won't have wasted all that time learning a skill you're going to give up anyway. If you fly a camera platform, auto level and GPS assisted, of course, is lovely.
Joe De Niro says he's new and he's got prop wash and wobble when he uses the throttle against fast drops and descents.
Yep.
Is it possible to get rid of it by tuning? Is it a normal vortex ring state, or will anti-gravity help? Yeah,
so anti-gravity won't help with that. That's not what anti-gravity fixes. Anti-gravity boosts the I term, and the I term responds too slowly to make a big difference in prop wash oscillation, which is a very fast changing state. What you need to do is go through the changes that I made to the filters, and that will reduce the latency of the PID loop and make it more capable of responding to that fast moving state, and then raise the D gain is the next step, assuming your motors don't get hot. And then the other thing you can do is you can lower P gain. Excess P gain will increase prop wash oscillation. That's what you're experiencing. When you're dropping into your own wash and jam the throttle at the bottom, or when you do a sharp 180 turn and you're moving, the copter sliding backwards through your own prop wash, that's prop wash oscillation. But I find that fixing the filters and raising D gain will get it most of the time. You seldom have to lower P gain, although that's the final step.
Josh Bartell would like to know, what are your thoughts on reversing motor direction, and how or if does that affect your tune?
So I don't think there's, for most people, I know this is a fact, I know a lot of people who've tried it, not just myself, and very few of them, only like 1 or 2 of them had said that there was a dramatic difference in the handling and the tuning. The major difference with reversing your prop rotation is that it doesn't throw dirt and grass onto your camera lens, it throws it into your stack, which is your call whether you want to do. I think there's a hawk over there. You see that?
Yeah.
There's a big old hawk flying. You guys can't see it. It throws dirt into your stack instead of on your camera lens. Now, personally, I like dirt on my camera lens because I can just wipe it off. Whereas if it gets all in my stack, there's not a lot I can do about that. But other people feel differently. It's up to you. But I don't think there's a big aerodynamic or tuning difference.
Radio rates versus Betaflight rates. Which do you do?
Betaflight rates. Yeah, Betaflight rates. Some people argue that there's higher resolution to Betaflight rates. I'm not sure that's actually true. I think you could. I don't think I did some thinking about that, and I looked into how much resolution OpenTX has internally for its rates and versus Betaflight, and I don't think there's a difference in the resolution, but I just prefer to set it up in the quad because I like the way Betaflight handles the rates with the S rate and the expo. If you wanted to do something with your rates that you like, a throttle curve, Betaflight's throttle curve is very, very rudimentary. It's just got the expo. If you want a more sophisticated throttle curve, you have to do that in your transmitter. But other than that, I do it all in Betaflight.
So Wow182 asks, how hot is hot for a motor? And wow, he actually just a few minutes ago demonstrated a warm motor to me, and I felt it with my hands. I was actually a little, it wasn't as hot as I thought he was going to say was warm or hot. So I would say, before I came over here today, my initial reaction to that question would have been, oh, if I touch it and it, you know, like burns my hands, like if I can't hold on to the motor, that's going to be too hot.
Absolutely.
And that it definitely is. And the motor that Josh brought over a minute ago and asked me to feel was, I mean, I could have held it, but it was right up underneath that point.
Right. It was,
you know?
it was uncomfortable, but not painful.
Right.
That's how I would put it.
But it's not as hot as I expected.
Yeah. I would say if you're holding the motor and it's painful, and obviously everybody's pain threshold is different. If you're a miner with calluses on your hand, well, then we're not talking about you. But if you hold it and it's painful, you're going to smoke it. You may not have smoked it yet. Sniff it. If it smells like enamel, you're smoking it. It's happening. If you see a white puff of smoke come out, you definitely smoked it. But if you hold it and it's painful, you must back down. You're going to damage it immediately. If you hold it and it's uncomfortable but not painful, I personally don't like to fly that way, but you might be able to get away with it depending on various other factors. The problem is that the motor will, when you break a prop or bend a prop, the motor will go from, it's a little warm, to smoked. And it can just do that immediately. And so it just depends on how much of a chance you want to take on that happening.
So this is a good question. It's from Chris, and he says, do you tune with your GoPro attached to the quad and or not? In other words, can your tune make a difference with your GoPro on or not?
Yeah, absolutely. I say tune how you fly. The GoPro does make a difference, adding 70 grams of weight. I had a quad, the best example I can think of is I had a quad once that the P term was right on the edge of oscillation. And if I took my GoPro off, I would start to get P-term oscillations, and if I put my GoPro on, they would go away, because the additional weight helped to damp the quad. I don't find that the tunes these days are usually that sensitive. The tuning envelope has gotten so wide that a wide variety of PIDs can really not produce bad effects. But I would in general tune how I fly. So if I'm tuning a racer, I would tune with the GoPro off. If I'm tuning a freestyle quad, I would tune with the GoPro on. However, I don't find a huge difference flying with it on or off. I feel the difference in the weight, but I don't think the tune dramatically changes because, again, the PID controller is so good, the tuning envelope is so wide these days. We're getting close to, I think we're going to wrap up soon. We'll take a few more questions coming up. I think that bye-bye. I've pretty much finished tuning the quad. You guys have seen me go through P-term, I-term, and D-term. There are a lot more permutations of that we could do, but especially as we're having a little bit of trouble with the video feed, I don't want to spend too much more time, and we're coming up on 1 hour 45. So I hope that's been valuable, and I hope the questions that have been answered have been valuable as well. We'll definitely do this again at some point in the future and try to get the kinks worked out, and hopefully we'll do some more different quads, because the problem is that these quads these days, they fly so good on default PIDs, there's hardly anything to do. I'd love to show you guys some quads that have some problems that have to be solved. We'll see what I can come up with. We're going to answer a few more questions. We'll go for 10 more minutes or so, and then we're going to wrap up. Thank you guys very much. I wonder, has anybody been using the super chat?
We've had a few super chats, but not for questions. They've just been donating
us money. We should do shout outs to the guys who donated.
Yeah,
you want to do shout outs?
Do that for sure.
That's what all the that's what all the gamers do. I just want to be like them.
Let me get a refresh here.
Yeah. Do some shout outs.
All right.
Let's see. Shout outs to Matthew McGann, who gave us $5. Everybody hit the thumbs up. He says, yeah, thumbs up. Like, comment, and subscribe. Yeah. Shout out to No Bull But D Bull FPV, Sasquatch FPV, Alexei C, Charles Cole, Matthew Lametta, And Joshua Bardwell gave us $2 and said, let's see how this whole super chat thing works. Who's that guy? All right, back to the questions. Let's get a few more in.
Let's see, so... Can Betaflight fly as well as raceflight? Johnny FPV uses raceflight and his footage is really smooth. Had to do it before the end, right guys?
They say there are no stupid questions. No, I chuckle about that. Let's start with the statement, Johnny FPV uses raceflight and his videos are really smooth. Johnny FPV's videos are really smooth because Johnny FPV is a fantastic tuner and pilot. I could give Johnny FPV a KK 2.0 board and some 1806 motors and some Gemfan 5040 props, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. You guys, it took me a while before I figured this out, especially because I love tuning and tweaking, and I thought that perfect flight performance came from a great tune. But it does, but also it comes from what you do with the sticks, and it's like the best example I can think of is Eddie Van Halen, right? And people are always asking how. If you're old like me, you remember people asking, how does Eddie Van Halen get his tone? Is it some special electronics he uses? Is it his amp? And it turns out that you could give Eddie Van Halen almost any guitar in the world and he would just start playing it and he would sound like Eddie Van Halen because it's in the fingers. And that's true for freestyle pilots and racing pilots too. Not to say that there aren't differences in how these things fly, especially before Betaflight 3.2 got the dynamic filter. Raceflight had a certain way that it flies that Betaflight wasn't able to emulate. I think with Betaflight 3.2, it's a lot closer. If you look at KISS, the way I flew a QUADCOPTER recently that someone let me borrow, and the rates, KISS rate curves, there's something really magical about the way a QUADCOPTER goes into and comes out of a flip and roll. It's really pleasant, and I don't know what it is. So there are differences, but fly what you like and what you feel good flying. And it will not make you into Johnny FPV if you go to race flight. What will make you into Johnny FPV, well, nothing really. He's a prodigy. But what will make you a better pilot is just more stick time. That's the bottom line.
Give a shout out to RC Flyer 85. He says he's actually able to watch a live cast while you're doing it. So
I'm glad to be able to do it.
I don't know. I think I've seen that name on RC groups quite a bit.
RC
he does
Flyer.
some reviews and stuff. Flying High FPV says he missed the first hour. Are we going to replay this later?
Yep. So this is actually going to go up on the channel. It processes after I'm done streaming, and then it goes up on the channel. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to re-upload the local DVR recording, which doesn't have the glitches that the video was having. So that'll be up in the within 24 hours. It's a huge file. It'll take a while to upload and process, but it'll be up within 24 hours.
AeroDog100 wants to know your recommendation on a first Betaflight flight controller for a KISS guy.
Well, it's funny that you say that. Let me just go to my desktop here and let me show you. Hang on. FPVknowitall.com, my new website that I haven't officially done a big launch on, but I'm sort of soft launching it. And there you will find the ultimate FPV shopping list, which is my attempt to. People are always asking me, what parts should I buy? What's the best flight controller? And I say here, the best. That's just SEO, guys. Sorry. I know that there are other good ones out there that aren't on the list, but what I want to do here is just pick just 2 or 3 of each thing that I think the widest variety of people are going to have a good experience with. And here you can find flight controllers, and you can see a few flight controllers that I suggest. And that's anytime you guys out there are wondering what flight controller would Joshua suggest to me, what motors, what FPV goggles, go check out my website fpvknowitall.com and the ultimate FPV shopping list, and it is all there. Thank you for the opportunity to plug.
I said the Kakute, because I've had good luck out of that.
Yeah, Kakute is one of them. Holybro Kakute F4 all-in-one is a good one. The only thing I would say about that one is that you have to make sure that nothing is touching the gyro, because the gyro is soft mounted. If you have some wires,
even a wire, yeah, I've had that problem.
A wire flopping up against it, anything is going to cause a problem. And here, you can be on camera again. You're going to talk, you can be on camera. And the other thing is that the ribbon cable that connects the gyro to the flight controller, you have to make sure you kind of lift it out of the way when you're soldering the video cables if you
Yeah.
burn it by accident. So my suggestion for a total beginner would be the CL Racing F4. It's $30 and it does almost, the only thing it doesn't do is it doesn't have an inverter for SmartPort telemetry. So if you're going to do telemetry, you have to do the uninvert hack. There's a new version of that board, the CL Racing F4S, and it does have the inverter, but I don't know the price. So, what else we got?
Scott Marshall says Betaflight F3 versus QUADCOPTER.
Well, Betaflight F3 is discontinued.
They're coming out with an F4.
Betaflight F4 versus QUADCOPTER. That's a tough one. I like the Betaflight F3 a lot, and I presumably will like the Betaflight F4, but the one thing they did that really bugs me is they have solder pads on the underside of the board. So if you need to do repairs on it, you got to unscrew 2 of your motors and kind of open your quad up like a sandwich, like a book. Sandwiches, you don't open sandwich. I don't know why I said that. You got to open it up. Yeah.
You meant before the closure.
Yeah.
When you're making your sandwich.
Oh, there you go. But then you don't open it back up again, do you?
No.
Anyway. The other thing is that a lot of people have trouble getting the ground pads to stick on the Betaflights. I don't know why. So that's a great board, but it would not be my first choice for a person who didn't already know about soldering, and it might not even be my second choice because of the solder pads on the underside. There's too many good. Back when it came out, it was the best. It was the only one that did the combination of things that it did. But now there's other ones that do that. It sort of set the standard. So,
Chris would like to know, have you used the new Maytech VTX?
yes. I have one copter that has that on there, but I haven't flown it yet, so no. Haven't used it. I'm a big fan of it on paper. And have you seen Maytech's new PDB and VTX in one that goes with their F405?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's basically the Maytech VTX HV built into a PDB that goes underneath the F405 and connects with a ribbon cable. So it's like just kind of getting a free VTX. It's not free, you pay for it, but in terms of space, it's like getting a free VTX. Very exciting.
A lot of people were asking about the F4 V5, that HLG Pro.
HL's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had 2 of those guys. I've had, kind of a mixed experience. The first one I think it made 4 or 5 flights and the video went out completely. Second one I had has been good. It's got a little bit of line issue in the video, but I don't have any caps or anything, so I've not even tried to fix that, and I think it would be solved with a cap. The company did support the one that went out. I sent them a video of the VTX through my goggles not working, and it was a couple days later they had a new one on the way, so I can say that they're good about supporting issues with that board, and I know those boards have gone on sale recently. I'd say they're worth a shot if you have a build that requires a really small, really low profile stack, because they do have everything built in.
Here's what kills that board for me, is they've got the video transmitter built in, but they don't have smart audio or Betaflight OSD control. You still have to push the button. And that, even if you don't mind pushing the button, just on principle, that's such a crime that I'm kind of mad at the board about that.
Good point.
But yeah, as far as reliability goes, some people have reported the VTX burned out, but it's really hard to tell how much of that is just the one bad experience making a lot of noise, and how much of that is a general indication of reliability.
The other thing too with those boards, they've got either a UFL or that newer style with
MMCX.
MMCX connector, and obviously everything's
It's got an MMCX.
there.
Yeah.
That thing comes unplugged, it's kind of hard to tell, so that could be some of the video problems, could actually be that connector coming undone.
MMCX is pretty secure.
Yeah.
It should be. Not like UFL. A couple more and then we'll wrap up. Any other good questions? Just dumb questions.
Yeah.
All right.
Couple suggestions, nothing too
All right.
crazy.
We're gonna wrap up. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I consider this a rousing success. That nothing crapped out. The video capture seemed to work okay, and I think this is. Can you think of another time when somebody did live FPV streaming?
We tried it one time on the stream with Boris, but it didn't work. So yeah, not that I'm aware of.
I consider
no.
this a rousing success. We'll try to do it better next time. But I'm super excited to have been able to do this with you guys. I've wanted to do this for a long time. Thank you, Chris, for being here, for helping with the stream.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you guys for being here. And I'm going to stop the stream now. I'll see you guys next time.
Love you guys.
Thanks. Happy flying. No.